overall composers, they seem to always do this, and then same way with 4, but maybe it didn't happen as much as 7 always going to 1, so that just doesn't become a rule right now for us. Alright, are there any questions about these 5 guidelines, rules, I guess, and making knowledge of the rules? Okay, let's take a look at that homework then. So, Matt, go ahead.
The second one, right, begins with a leap greater than a perfect fourth. And then it extends, does the rule 4B apply since you don't have a note that approaches the leap?
Right, so that's just, it's not happening, so we don't have to worry, you can start with a leap up.
Right, but if you start with the leap up, are you still obligated to go down in your next step?
Yes.
Even though you don't have the approach coming down into the first one?
Correct. Yeah, you still gotta go down. So this leap is a 5th, that's okay because we are going down, on the next note, so that's alright.
So if you'd gone up for the third note,
That would have been wrong, yep. Good question. And what is the, interval here between the F sharp and the B? Just letter names.
Oh, that's 4.
4th, alright, and this is a perfect 4th, but, so, does it matter that the note is going down, or does it need to go up after it? Doesn't matter, right, it's perfect 4th. Now, I think technically it's any 4th, but I have had students, like, identify something as the augmented 4th, and because the augmented 4th, that's bigger than perfect 4th, I think technically then it should go in the opposite direction. If we're gonna stay, with the rules, so, if you catch that one at some point, congratulations, I don't think it doesn't really pop up that much, but it could. Alright, how many of you found one error in this one, number 2? One error.
Only one or at least one?
At least one error. Alright, how many of you found at least 2 errors? How many of you found at least 3? 4? 5? 6?
There are 2.
Alright. What is one error? We got one? One volunteer? Go ahead.
Second measure, second note, is not chord tone.
Alright, good. The 1 chord in the key of E minor is E, G, B, and this is a C. So yes, circle that, put a letter, number above it. This is your first one, it'll be A or 1, and then off to the side. Again, NCT is perfectly fine with me, it stands for non-chord tone. Or if you just want to say note not in chord, that works as well, something along those lines. Alright, how about another error? Yeah.
Interval from C to D sharp is augmented.
C to D sharp is an augmented second, yep. So I'm gonna circle that, put B or 2 next to it. Over here, I can just write +2. And that would be enough information, or you could write no augmented intervals, something along those lines, just. That's 2, who's got a 3rd? Say that again. Oh, there you go, yep. So we got a big leap here, E to C, it's a leap of a 6. Needs to be approached in the opposite direction, and this is approached in the same direction of the leap. You leap up, and you're going up into the leap. So, it was not approached correctly. It does look like it's left correctly, it's going down, so that's good. So I would circle at least the leap, or maybe even the approach note, and write leap not approached correctly, or something along those lines. Alright, anybody got another one? Cody?
Also in the second measure, the first and second notes, C to F sharp is not augmented interval as well.
Good job. Yes, this one was trickier. A lot of people miss that one. C to F sharp, because F sharp's in our key signature, we forget that the F is sharp, and C to F sharp is an augmented fourth. So we have an augmented fourth here and an augmented second there. So, or you could have just circled them all and said no augmented intervals, but I think it'd be better to identify each interval, circle that as a second, as another one. And just, again, you could write +4, and that would be enough, like, just the fact that you're stating this is an augmented interval is enough for me to know that you know that it's wrong. Or you could write no augmented intervals, or something along those lines. Yes, Andrew?
I always get confused when it's descending, how to assess it.
Always from bottom up, even if it's in.
No more, no.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Always up, always bottom up. So yeah, even though the second note is the lower of the two, in my mind, I'm kinda like thinking about bringing it back and then going up to the note for that.
So it's C to F sharp.
Yep. Alright, you had another one, possibly.
In the first measure, the second to third note
Uh-huh.
is a diminished fourth, but it's followed by another step down. This is a step up.
Second. Wait, second.
I've got that as a diminished fourth, followed by eight.
Oh, this is a perfect one. So F sharp to B, key of F sharp, six sharps, B is not one of them, so that's actually a perfect one, so that's actually okay.
Okay. How about the second read in the last measure?
Let me,
Last
last
one
one.
is a non-chord tone. Read it wrong.
Alright, so in the key of E, scale degree 5,
E.
there's your B, that's your root. Anybody find anything else? Yeah, I think that was it actually. Yeah, any questions or confusion on? Seth, you kinda missed a lot. We just went over a review, so I'm not gonna do it again, but, this is all, what we're talking about comes from page 66, page 67 in the textbook. So I would advise you to read that over, watch the Dr. B video, have him help you explain it to you. I'll take a look at number 3 when he passes it in, but, how many of you found at least one error? Number 3. How many of you found at least 2 errors? How many of you found 3 errors? Alright, good. I think there's only 2 errors. We're good. Alright, let's take a look at our melodies that we had to write. So we're using this stuff right here. Alright, we're in the key of E flat. Joey, what notes are in our 1 chord?
B, D, F, B flat, D, F.
Flat, D, F. Andrew, what notes are in our 4 chord?
E flat, G, B flat.
Flat. Back to our 1, which is B flat, D, F. Seth, what notes are in our 5 chord?
F, E, C.
C. Amelia, what notes are in our 6 chord? B flat, B, our four chord we already did, E flat, G, E flat. Cody, what notes are in our two chord?
C, E flat, and G.
C, E flat, G, and then Carter, our five chord, oh, we already did our five chord, never mind. F, A, C, and then back to one, E flat, G, F. Okay. Who's got a melody they wanna volunteer for the rest of the class to criticize? Alright, Cody.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you just come on up?
Well, I can do that.
Come on down.
All right, Bob, or Drew Carey these guys.
So, we got B flat in the first chord, B flat's the root, E flat in the next chord, E flat's the root, D in the next chord, D is the third, C the fifth, G is the root, E flat is the root, C is the root, E flat the third, A the third, E flat is the root. All chord tones. Rhythm looks good. The only thing I would change, and you might hit it, is that the last note should probably be dotted half, or you have a rest there on the end, either one. And then the only other thing, I'm noticing, and it's not, I wouldn't mark this wrong right now anyway, but the stem direction, because it's not, if it were all, if you did have like three more voices and this were your soprano part, all the stems would go up, but since it's not, if it's above the middle line, you have your stems going down, and so on. That's nitpicky. Let's take a look at, your melody, alright? So, rhythm, harmony, we just covered that. Contour, is this contour good? You don't see any reason for error in this contour. Do we have one focal point? Yeah, focal point G, looks good. So, is it mostly stepwise?
Yeah.
That could be debatable. Do we have a leap or skip here, a leap, skip, 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 leap? So I'd say out of a 4-bar measure, you got a lot of skips, but I wouldn't mark necessary again. This is the first time we're going through this. If that's the only thing that you gotta work on, then yeah, maybe just try to include a little more stepwise motion. But other than that, I think you're good. Alright, so then let's talk about our skips and our leaps. Say number 4. Are there any augmented intervals? I know this takes some time, but like, if you're not sure, B flat to E flat, that's perfect chord, E flat down a step, half step, D to C is a whole step, C to G, perfect fifth, E flat down to, or G down to E flat, major third, E flat down to C, minor third, back up, minor third. Diminished interval here, we haven't gotten that, we're just on augmented. And then up a step. So we're gonna have to bank that diminished there. Sevenths, no sevenths. Intervals larger than a perfect octave, nope. Diminished intervals, alright, so we do have a diminished interval. Yeah, they're okay as long as it moves by step in the opposite direction, which this does. So we got a diminished fifth, but we resolved it correctly, so we're good there. Yeah.
You said that it had to move by step in the opposite direction.
So we have a diminished
For the
fifth.
diminished interval.
Yeah, so we have a diminished fifth down, and then it's resolved by step up.
No, the book doesn't specify that it has to be by step in the opposite direction, it just says change direction by step.
Change direction, which means the direction
Oh,
up.
okay.
Opposite to the loop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
English is hard.
And I think like, yeah, some of these things they have in the book is alright. Melodic interval larger than a perfect fourth is usually fast approach. Alright, so we do have perfect fourth here, a perfect fifth. So he approached it opposite direction, left it opposite direction. So it's approached and left in the opposite direction, so we're good. Smaller leaps used consecutively. So we got a skip and another skip here. G, E flat, C outlines the C minor triad. C up to E flat, but it doesn't keep going, so that would not be included in there. So that is good. So far so good. 7. The other part, tendency tone. The only tendency tone, only 7 we got is here, and we already said that it moves up by step. So looks good. Let's hear what sounds like.
That's what I'm
So melody on its own.
Do I get bonus points if I put articulation in my
Give me a smiley face.
Yeah.
Alright, who's got another one? They want us to rip apart in front of everybody. Matt? Alright.
Yes.
Will this be on our test, like, writing it on a melody?
No. Maybe. Maybe on the exam.
It'd be harder. Oh, on the exam, that's fine. Right.
But you do have to do it for the corrupt project.
I am kind of. I'll get a full choir to come in and sing my own project live. What?
Oh.
I'm on my I don't know why I'm thinking so hard on 4-bar melody.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this is not Mozart here. And so his, Mozart had a lot of more options with notes and things.
Not with that attitude.
Well, fair enough. Okay, thank you, Matt. The rhythm looks good. Harmony. F in your one chord, fifth, E flat, it's a fifth, B, it's a third, C, fifth, D, fifth, E flat, root, C, root, G, fifth, A, third, E flat, root. All four tones work. Shape. Does anybody see anything wrong with the shape or the contour of this? You have one focal point?
Yeah.
Yep, one focal point. You have some skips. You have some skips again, but again, the rest of it is all stepwise. So I'd say majority is stepwise, so that's good. Yep.
Would the first measure, since it goes to fourth word, oh wait, that doesn't have to try.
So on triad, F, D flat, E, on one chord. And then we have E flat, C, G, that outlines C minor triad. So the skips are all good. No big leaps, so we didn't have to adjust for like approach or do anything special for any big leaps. And the fact that you have like a few spots with skips, I'd say like this doesn't really need a leap, that like, you're good. What else? Yeah, chord.
So I think the second measure said non-chord tone on the four.
E flat, G, E
Oh,
flat.
sorry, it was all shifted over.
Yeah, I ran out of space. Let's see, what else am I missing? Oh, scale degree 7. We don't get a scale degree 7 go here, and it does resolve up to 1, right there. Smaller leaps, we said we're good. Melodic intervals larger than 4 we don't have. Any augmented intervals? The main, one of the most common augmented intervals that you will find in a major key would be from scale degree 4 to scale degree 7. So again, if we're at B flat, scale degree 4 is E flat, scale degree 7 is A, so E flat to A is an augmented chord. So if you can avoid, like if that helps you to kind of like narrow down what am I even going to see augmented intervals in a major key, that would be one case of seeing an augmented interval from scale degree 4 up to scale degree 7. And it's kind of tricky to find sometimes, especially if you're not looking at the key signature. If you're just looking at E to A, oh, that's a perfect chord. But you gotta look at the key signature as well. So that it does get a little bit hidden sometimes, a little bit hard to find. Augmented, no sevenths, no larger, nothing larger than an octave, no diminished intervals. I think you're good.
Good morning.
Huh. They're all boring right now because they're all chord tones. There's not much you can do about that. Here's your melody. Alright, it's pretty. I mean, that's about, like, as far as being creative, that's kinda all you got right now, but again, it's kinda nice to limit yourself instead of having all the possibilities of what you can do with being creative, just being creative with contour and conjunct and stuff, disjunct motion. That is something just in it of itself to work on with these exercises, so, I think it's a nice one. Alright, questions about what we're doing at all? Anything that got, that we haven't, that just seems more confusing or anything like that? All good so far? Alright, if you think of anything, let me know. Let's continue on though. Okay, notating chords. We've already talked about this a little bit. The type of music that we're gonna see is gonna be more of a reduced score. So again, we're gonna have our soprano with the stems going up and our alto with the stems going down in treble clef. In bass clef then we have our tenor with the stems going up and our bass with our stem going down. Right now, we are going to avoid parts crossing. So we don't, even if you want a C and an F in your top two voices, A and an F, the A would have to be the soprano part, the F would have to be in the alto part. We don't want the voices crossing. Usually it's like very obvious when that happens if it's in like the same clef. Where it doesn't get as obvious is when you have, say, a tenor and an alto, and they're both, like, tenor's kinda high, alto's kinda low. That's where it gets a little less obvious. So say our tenor starts on the E, and our alto is also on the D, and then our tenor goes up to E, and our alto goes down to C. Right? At this point, our alto and our tenor have crossed. The tenor has gone above the alto. Doesn't look like it on paper. When I'm looking at this visually, alto still plays above the tenor, but the sounding pitch, this E flat 4 is higher than this C chord. So that would be crossing parts, what we're trying to avoid here. This is okay. They're both being on the same note. But notice how far apart the C's are. What you don't want to do is write it like this. Seems like the easy, like, kind of makes sense. They're both on the same note, and if it's in the upper voices, it's okay to do that, or the lower two voices. But in the middle, what you're doing is you're taking that leisure line way out of whack. And it's no longer spaced correctly. Well, what happens here is we have 4 parts, and now we only have 3 parts.
I think it's supposed to be saying that the tenor is the C.
Yeah, the tenor and the alto, maybe it's the C, but again, the only way to really write that would be this.
Yeah.
So, just showing you some common errors that students will make from time to time. Alright, voicing a single triad. We've kind of covered this as well. So this is a G major triad, each voiced, like each measure voiced differently. They're still all G major triad. You tell me what you hear, or what you like, what you don't like. So the first one, instructions in advance. Second first voicing versus the second voicing.
Can you play it one more time?
Yeah. This is the first voicing. Yep. Second one.
The first one's more
What's
decent.
the, intervals are at the second one?
Up at the top,
Yeah.
as opposed to here.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
The one in A seems like it has like a little more weight to it, I guess.
Okay.
Like,
Bowler.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say,
You know,
because it
same
sounds
thing.
more, yeah.
Isaiah, you had some comment?
Oh yeah, the bottom two is empty.
Say that again?
The bottom two is empty.
The bottom feels empty on the second one? Yeah. So you have the G and the D closer together, or it a little more spread out. Could also be because the third is up higher in the second one versus the first one. Letter C. Here we double the, I guess the fifth is doubled. Yeah, as opposed to B, looks like the root is doubled. And well, yeah, I guess it's still on the same note, doesn't it? But the doubling occurs higher. C, here's D. And here's E. What do we notice, like, I guess, between D and E? Carter, what do you think?
for E at least, E doesn't, since there's nothing near the G, or the highest G, I guess, that G comes in like super harshly. I
The
guess.
D at the top?
Yeah. Yeah. Or it almost gets drowned out by the bass.
Okay, let's see, what about D, letter D? This is not good or bad, we're just making comment, like, it's not that one's better than the other one.
It's very bright.
Bright, okay, that's a good way to put it. Brighter. Maybe this is darker. This is in the lower register. Also, what do you notice about when you have all the notes in the lower register? Tends to get a little muddy. Right? Like, it's harder to kind of hear the clarity of the pitches. So when you, like, if, say you're scoring for orchestra and you have everything in the like the tubas and the bass, and the cello, you're gonna get this,
It's almost like a drone.
yeah, I mean, there's gonna, it has to be a special purpose for that, you know? Like, you might hear that when the villain, we were talking about this in musical posters, like when the villain comes, Darth Vader comes in, you got these pounding brass, old brass instruments, and that represents this suspicious character coming in, you know, or evil character. So there was a reason for doing that, maybe more angelic type of character. You have the notes all up in the high end, you're using flutes and violins to represent that.
I feel like you could almost argue the same thing in D when you have all your notes in the higher register. It's not nearly as bad as having all your notes in a lower
Sure.
register.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
I
it would
feel
have to
like-
be a real purpose for it.
Right, I feel like out of all five of these chords, I think A did it the best because all the notes in the chord are very spread out.
If you're going for a spread out sound,
Yeah.
you know, again, it depends on what you're after as far as, scoring. So again, not to say one's better than the other, it's just that they're all, it depends on what you're going for. So, what we just observed, again, this is not one's better than the other, it's just what you observed. We have two types of structures that we just saw. There's closed structure, where it's less than an octave between the soprano and the tenor. You have soprano, you have your tenor part. You have your soprano, bass can be used about anywhere, and your tenor. So the distance, doesn't matter where the alto is in this, but the distance between the tenor and the soprano at this point is a 6. So this would be considered a close structure, less than an octave between the soprano and the tenor. If it's an octave or more between the soprano and tenor, we'll say the tenor's on a B flat and the soprano's also on a B flat, and the tenor alto's still on the B. Now we have an octave is considered an open structure. So when they're closer together, creates a sort of sound where, I don't know, the voices, are just more condensed. When you spread them out, maybe you get a fuller sound. So again, just depends on what you're going for. As a composer of the Baroque period, this would be something definitely that you could use to maybe highlight a lyric. Again, maybe if you're in your hymn, like you have them grouped together, and then the text starts talking about the glory of God, and you want the voices to kind of spread out and give this fullness, sort of represent like God being everywhere kind of thing. So then the voices spread out. That would be one way that you could be creative, even again within this small context of limited choices that you guys have. So, do I expect you guys to hear when it's happening? No. Do I hear when it's happening? No. But we can see when it's happening, I guess. So here's our chorale. Oops, there's help with the volumes up.
Example 5, 8.
Other than when you're looking at it, it's difficult, but it's one of those really slight things that as a composer is something that you might want. It can help motivate you. Sometimes having those little things is just enough to give you like motivation to like, oh, this is gonna be really good because I'm doing this little trick with it or something, or you feel passionate about it, like you feel motivated. So, but yeah, the beginning here. If we notice between the B and the G, B is the tenor, G is the soprano, B to G is a 6, B to G again is a 6, A to F sharp is a 6, G to E is a 6, F sharp to D is a 6, G to G is an octave. Now we have open. F sharp to A is an octave and a third, so it's more than an octave. G to B is an octave and a third. G to B is octave and a third. B to B are octaves. Now the tenor climbs up higher. The soprano is staying the same on the B. So now we got D to B, which is a 6. B to A, which is a 5th. B to G is a 6. E to C is a 6. D to B 6. B to A 5th. And then the structure gets tight. So this is involving the top three, well, really the top three voices, the alto is just kinda stuck between. I just mentioned this, but one of the rules that we wanna, apply to what we're doing, do not cross the voices. It always says, alright, so do not allow any part to cross above the soprano or below the bass. When you're listening to these chorales, actually, well, I didn't point it out Monday, but where do you think our ears are mainly drawn to?
Are you saying which part?
Yeah.
The soprano.
Soprano. We hear the high part, like, 'cause that feels like the melody, right? What's another part that our ears are usually drawn to?
The bass.
The bass. So we hear these highs and we hear these lows, and they're trying to come out pretty quick. Everything else in the middle, we might not hear as clear. They sometimes gets mumbled together, and you're not hearing exactly what's happening. The more training, or maybe singing in choir, you start to pick out those parts a little bit better. But I think on the majority, you could say most casual listeners are gonna hear the soprano and maybe the bass and those two parts. So those, like, composers recognize from the beginning that these are the important parts. And if you have a part, say your alto crosses above your soprano, then it kind of messes with the listener's attention of what's happening with the melody. And the same thing with the tenor goes below the bass, you kind of lose the sense of, well, where's the bass go and what's happening with that. So those two parts you definitely don't want to cross. It says the alto and tenor lines may cross briefly if there's a musical reason to do so. Right now, I tell this every year to my students, you guys don't have a musical reason to do so. So let's just keep the rule, our strict, that we just don't cross the voices even between the alto and the tenor. I mean, Bach would have a musical reason, none of you guys are Bach. So, no offense, but we're just not gonna do that. Of course, they have to show an example of Bach doing that, because they always have to show the counter.
Example 5:10.
So here we have our G, way up high in our tenor, G to F sharp back to G, and our alto jumps down to a D, below, and then up. What's the musical reason you think for Bach to do this? For me, the musical reason you do this is because he's treating every part as a separate melody. So we have this melody in our soprano, and then it works really well with the bass because the bass is going opposite direction. It's a great moment of counterpoint I was talking about on Monday. So just between those two voices, there's a lot happening. But then he throws in this alto part. Against the soprano. And then he's got this great tenor part way up here in the G. So he didn't want to have to like change any of these parts, so he's gonna, well, alright, so the alto's gonna dip, I got this big leap, but it's a musical leap, and I really want this to happen. There's your musical explanation. Even though it does dip below the tenor, this melody was very important to him to keep in the alto, and have all this kind of more or less activity happening in the alto and the tenor, while the bass and the soprano are pretty straightforward melody lines. soprano's basically walking right down the scale, bass is pretty much walking up the scale. So that would be his musical reason for to do that. Again, we're not there, and plus you guys don't have the tools yet to really explore those options yet. He's breaking some of the rules we just talked about. Even we have a leap down of a fifth, and he didn't set it up the way that we told you guys. I told you to set it up at this point. So he's Bob. He can break some rules. He created the rules. You can break them. Carter, you got it.
So for our homework example, when it's like one, do we have to use a ordinal or can we use?
At this point, yes.
Oh.
Hold your horses. Alright. Spacing. This rule holds pretty hard as well. This one catches a lot of students. When writing for 3 or more parts, avoid overly spacious sonorities. Overly spacious meaning one, like the examples we saw earlier where all the voices were in the right hand, all the notes were in the, and it was like overly spacious between the bass and the top voices. Or the other example where they're all in the bottom and you have one note up in the top. Overly spacious, too much space between them. So, adjacent upper parts, so not the bass, top 3 parts, tenor, alto, soprano, adjacent within an octave of each other. So, we're talking about an octave or more between the soprano and the tenor as being open. That's between soprano and tenor. They're not adjacent because you got an alto part in the middle. What we're talking about the parts right next to each other. So between the soprano and the alto, octave, okay. Anything more than an octave, not okay. Between the alto and the tenor, octave, okay. Anything more than an octave, not okay. Between the tenor and the bass, octave, okay. A 10, okay. A 12, okay. It can be as far apart. The bass is, we're gonna learn, kind of does its own thing right now. The bass is gonna be kind of, doesn't have as many rules and regulations as the other ones, other 3 voices. Bass kind of gets to do their own thing. The top 3 voices are kind of bound together. So if you notice in this example, between there's an A in the alto, an A3, and you got the C5 in the soprano, it's more than an octave. That would be wrong. Between the tenor, here on the D3, and the F4, in the alto, more than an octave. Not good. Here, between the bass and the tenor, more than an octave, that's fine. Alright, so that's the rule about spacing. Keep the top 3 voices closer together. Bass can kind of do its own thing. And an octave is as far apart as they can be from each other. Ranges. These can be subjective as well, but I'm not a vocalist and I'm not playing choir, but I've talked to many students that have all been in choir and they seem to all believe that this is pretty appropriate. So soprano as low as a middle C and up to the G5. That's as high as we want our sopranos to get. Again, these are kind of like bass ranges for if you got like a professional choir where sopranos can sing much higher. That would work. I guess I think from what I've been told, these are good ranges for most like say high school, college choir. The tenor, I thought that seemed kind of high, but they said from I guess talking to most students, it's clipping the range, but not fully outside of anything that high. But for our class, we can have our tenors up there. Alto down to this, the G, below middle C, or G3, up to D5, tenor, C3, up to G5, or sorry, G4, bass, E2, up to C4. So, if you're doing your chorale project and your soprano gets up to an A, I'm not gonna mark it wrong, but I don't wanna see them floating too much up more above the staff. And the same way with the alto, I don't wanna see it really, I think it's kind of pretty generous for an alto range, so I wouldn't really expect it to go much lower. Same way with the tenor, we really wouldn't push them much higher than G, so use your own discretion. If you're a vocalist and you wanna, like, if you understand what the ranges are, and you're pretty confident with that, I'll accept it, but let's try to keep within this range as much as we can. Let's see.
What's your vocal range, Mr. Ware?
I don't know, I've never actually like really tried to. That would be something worth figuring out at some point. I seem to I don't have a very high range. I would love to sing higher, I'd love to sing falsetto, but I just don't know how to do it.
Gotta sing along to like Beach Boys.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
yeah, I've gotten better, but, and the more backup vocals I've done with different bands, I've stayed away from doing backup vocals for a long time, but then it's become a necessity in some bands for me to do it, which I never really thought of myself as a singer even capable of doing, but I feel I'm getting alright at it, you know. I don't know, you heard me the other night, it wasn't that bad.
Works very well in the context of the songs presented.
Yeah, right. I mean, maybe someday I'll be a lead singer for one song. That's what I like. That's one of my goals for the bands out there. Like, I got like, oh, Wertz is in the band. Let's do that song that he sings. So like, that'll be my no.
Like the Ringo number.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's take a look at this one. So for this example, we have to fill in the missing chord tones.
Is that the circle one?
Yeah, now, for 1 through 4, they have the S stands for soprano, B stands for bass, so soprano and bass is given to us. They only want us to be a 3-part texture here, so only the alto. For 5 through 8, since the alto and the tenor are both circles, we would make this a 4-part texture. Alright, so if we're in the key of G, then we have to score a 1 chord. What notes are on 1 chord in the key of G? G, D, D. We have the G in our bass, we have our B in our soprano. So what note are we missing from this chord? The D. So then the question is, where do we put the D? Some of these are easier and kind of more obvious than others. Some of them are a little bit tricky. We have more than one option.
I'm just saying, the bass in this project has a high vocal range.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty idea.
Alright, so we have a D for our alto.
It's right above middle C.
Yeah, we got very much only one
I was
option.
gonna
If
say
we wanna
there's
keep,
only one option.
if we wanna keep the D, the alto between our soprano and our bass, we really only have one option. If you put it up there, it'd be wrong. Why?
Because
Across
it's
the part.
Cross voices. Ghostbusters don't cross. Alright.
Well, until you got, despite the big bad, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, that's your option. F minor, the 5 chord. What notes belong to our 5 chord in F minor? C, E, and D. And E natural, because it's scale degree 7 and it gets raised. And that's why we already did that for you. then E gets raised, if it gets nice. I don't think that. Alright, so what note are we missing? G, again, in this example, pretty much only one option, right? Here we go. Next one. B flat, that's our 4 chord.
1, 5, 4, 3, progression over 2 years, 2 seconds. Could you imagine learning that? Like a song where you change keys every measure?
They didn't say it's not allowed. It's not allowed.
Okay. Our 4 chord in the key of B flat. E flat, G, B flat. We have our E flat in our bass, we have our G in our soprano, we need a B flat. Now we have 2 options. Which one's the lower right option?
The one's in the middle of the staff, because then it'd still be within the octave range.
Right, we have interval of 6. The other option would be here. B flat, it's the right note, but more than an octave between the 2 voices, so we have a space there. Okay. Let's take a look at 4-part examples then. 4-part, I think, right here. We got F major. We have our 6 chord, our root, the bass. So what notes are in our 6 chord in the key of F major?
D, F, and A.
Yeah. So what I'll have to do is write the notes somewhere, like either close by or under it, off the side, just to help me out. And this is another thing that we're gonna have, that we'll learn eventually, probably next week, is that if you're writing for 4 voices, but you only have 3 notes, what do you do with the 4th voice? What note do you give the 4th voice? In this case, right now, we're always going to double the root. Alright? Later, we'll get away from that, but right now, always remember double the root. So in this case, it's already been done for us. We have a D in the bass, we have a D in the soprano, both roots are done. We need an F and an A. Carter, what do you think?
I feel like what makes the most sense is if you put F in the bass clef.
F right here?
Yeah.
Okay?
And then you put A in the treble clef. And
Here?
that's, yeah.
Okay. Anybody see anything wrong with that? What do you see wrong with
I
it?
think the alto and tenor are too far.
Yeah, we got more than an octave here. So yeah, for reading purposes, like even the F and the bass stuff, or like on in the staff and the alto on the staff, makes sense, but they're too far apart. So how could you change, what if you really wanted to keep the alto on that A?
You could move in after. No, yeah. Because then the soprano and the alto would be just like.
Oh, you can put the,
If you move the alto down,
I mean, you guys. I
so
guess
it's
you-
closer to the tenor, what happens?
You get more than an
You get
octave.
more than octave between your alto and your soprano.
So I guess you could put a bunch of ledger lines and move your tenor.
You move your tenor up. It's still within our range, because the G is where it taps out 3 letter lines above. So we're still good. So this is one way to do it. Is there another way to write this?
if you lowered the, alto down to the F, and then gave the tenor A, another way to do it.
Yeah. Often I've found that if you do kind of get into that predicament, as you're writing either your tenor starts getting too low or too high, or what, flip-flop the notes with, like, say, another voice, especially like the alto. Usually that, if you can do that, it's a good way, usually resolve the problem. That's it. But, so for this example, we actually have two different answers, and they're both right. So, if you were doing your homework and Carter wrote the first one and Cody wrote the second one, you'd both be right. What's the, well, I'm trying to say it without giving away the answer. How would we describe this scoring versus this scoring? We just went over the terms. Carter?
The first one is closed. The second one is open.
First one's close because there's less than an octave between the soprano and the tenor, and the second one's open because it's more than an octave between the soprano and tenor. But they're both right. As far as what we're looking for, there's no wrong, or neither one of them are wrong. They're gonna sound different. Okay? You want to hear it sound? They're both gonna sound good. First one. Second one. Here. Right here. Right here. Yeah. Better A, better B, better one, two. Number 6 is the key of E minor. And we have an A in our bass, an A in our soprano, and the chord is a minor 4 chord. What notes belong to our minor 4 chord? Then you see E minor, A, C, E, and I'm gonna double the bass, double the root. So, right now, looks like we have an A in our bass, an A in our soprano, so we need a third and a fifth. Seth, what do you think?
You do middle C for the tenor, and then alto will be the E on the first one.
Yes. That works. Can we do the opposite? Not unless we're gonna cross voices, and again, we don't have a musical reason to do so. I know you're arguing me on that harder, I don't know, the rest of the semester, but otherwise it'll look like this. And we have the tenor crossing above the alto, which we wanna avoid, so. Some of these will only have one answer, some of them might have two. Let's look at letter D here. Let's review the two conventions concerning spacing. What are our two conventions concerning spacing? Remember?
You probably do like
We just went over one of them.
Open and close.
What's that?
Open and close.
No, not that part.
Is it referring to the crossing?
Yeah,
Don't
not
do
crossing.
that, don't cross voices.
Cause you're
Right,
not
and then
blocked.
The other one,
Keeping the adjacent parts within the octave.
yes. So, adjacent part, don't, like what we've experienced on that first chord. You have the alto too low, too far apart, alright. So those are our two, conventions concerning spacing. Point out in the following example, any places where those conventions are not followed. So we're looking for errors here.
Right.
So
You guys make a note for an octave, spacing between all of us, and I'm getting there, start.
right here. Also though, right here.
Mhm.
Is this good?
That's an octave.
That's an octave, so this is okay. But the error occurs right here. Yep. And then it continues to occur all the way to the end.
Mhm.
So circle all of that. Other, any other errors?
Last note, the first measure is
Yeah. And the only reason why we know that is because the bar line, or the stems are going in the opposite direction. And then it happens again here, so circle them both, voices are crossed. Yeah. What about here? We got more than an octave happening.
Yeah.
You don't care because it's the base?
Don't care because it's the bass, right? Bass can do its own thing. Bass is on and on. There's no road.
No full bar.
All right. This one's good review. Analyze the excerpt from a Bacharel using Roman numerals, base position symbols. Then show beneath each Roman numeral the structure of the chord, whether it's open or closed. O for open, C for closed. The note in parentheses in measure 3 is not part of the chord, should be ignored for this purpose. Measure 3. Oh, this one. Alright, let's listen to it.
Self-test. 5-2-A.
And the first chord, there's a G, E flat, to D, and a G. I'm not gonna write them all out, I'm gonna write it out right here. G, B flat, and D, and another G. What's the root of this chord? G. And what scale degree is G in the key of G minor? 1. And what type of chord is this? Minor. We have a B flat and it's a minor key, and we got a minor 1 chord. The root of the chord is in the bass, this is the root position, so we're all done. Next chord, G, B flat, D, G. That sounds familiar. Alright, so we got another 1 chord in root position. Next one, F sharp, A, D, A. F sharp, A, D, and A. Right? Want to reorganize them so I can see a root position, triad here. Put the key down an octave. That looks like root position. D is my root. What scale degree is D in the key of G minor? Good, 5. And what type of chord is this? Major. Major 5 chord. Alright? The F sharp though is in the bass, not the D. So what's the BPS symbol? 6. Where's the root? Alright. Then we have G, B flat, D, B flat. is my root, what scale degree is C in the key of G?
Four.
And what type of triad is this? Minor. So minor 4 chord. And E flat then is the bass note, not the C. So what's the BPS here? Also first inversion, the third is the bass, so it's first inversion. Then we have D, A, F sharp, D. That sounds familiar too. We did D, F sharp, A, we said that's our 5 chord. This time the D is in the bass, so it's root position. Don't have to go any farther. Then we have C, A, F sharp, D. C, A, F sharp, D. Alright. How can we rearrange that so it's a 7 chord?
D, F sharp, A,
D, F sharp, and C. So D is my root, so it's still a 5 chord, but it's a 5/7 chord. If the D is in the bass, if it were, I could leave it alone, but the C is in the bass, not the D. So this is an inversion. Which inversion is it? Third inversion, meaning 2. So, again, reminder, because there was some confusion on the test. Erase the 7, put a 2 there instead. Or 4 2 would work as well. Okay. Then we have G, B flat, G, B. Sounds like a 1 chord to me. Only one. Then we have A, C. We're told not to analyze the G. So A, C, F sharp, C. A, C, F sharp, and C. So it looks like F sharp's my root. What scale degree is F sharp in the key of G minor? 7. And what type of chord is this? Diminished. It's a diminished 7, or diminished chord off the scale degree 7. The C is in the bass, the A is in the bass, not the F sharp. So what's the inversion symbol? 6. Right, then we have G, D, G, B flat. Sounds like another 1 chord. And root position. C, E flat, A, C. C, E flat, A, and another C. Now write the E flat in here just because it's so far away from my key signature, I forgot. I don't do it. A, C, E flat, looks like A is my root. What scale degree is A in the key of G? 2. And what type of chord is this? Diminished, because our 2 chords are diminished and minor. Alright, and then the C is in the bass, not the A. So once again, the third. The answer there is 6, first inversion. Then we have E, D, F sharp, A, which we've seen a few times. That's our 5 chord, and that's in root position. Alright. This is worth noting, because again, as we progress, we're going to talk about, different inversions. Notice what are the majority of these chords are in root position, right? That's probably more common than anything else in this style of music. Root position, triads. They're probably going to make up the majority of the chords that you're going to see. And then when you have inversions, most of the time the inversion is going to be first inversion. Second inversion, triads, have a real special purpose. And again, we probably won't talk too much about it until fortunately next semester. But, you just don't, you just don't see them as often. You're gonna see mostly root position, you'll see some first inversion, and then second inversion triads are not used as much. Third inversion 7 chords, occasional as well, but not very often. So that's just kind of me pointing that out for future reference. I feel like the more times I might say it, the more it will start to sink in. The other part of this assignment was to identify whether or not you have an open or closed structure. So for the first chord, yeah, we're only looking at the distance between the tenor and the soprano. Is this an open or a closed structure?
It is a closed structure.
Closed structure because
The soprano and the tenor are less than an octave.
soprano and tenor less than an octave. So the sixth of octave. So we write a C below our Roman numeral. That's what you have to do for your homework. Write a C below your Roman numeral. What about the next one? Same thing, yeah, the tenor and the soprano being removed. The next one are 5 chord, right here.
Is open an octave or more?
Which one's up and out?
Close is an octave. Octave is close.
Alright, we got 2 different answers, which ones? We got, alright, we got one side and then side with Carter.
I'm gonna go octave is open.
Octave is open?
Yeah.
It is it open as an octave or more? Yeah. If you, Andrew, I had to look that up several, even teaching this class, I've like had to refer to that before, so don't feel bad about this. Yes, so this would be open, octave, then we got a, octave between the tenor and the soprano. Alright, the next beat, we have a D in our tenor, a B in our soprano. That would also be more than an octave, right? Open. Even when the B in the tenor or the tenor jumps up to the B, skips up to the B, we still have an octave. So that would also be open for that entire beat. The next beat is what? Close. Back together. Next beat. Back to open.